The story continues with Dark Schneider's battle against Arshas. Just when Gara and the others think Dark has been killed by the rocks that fell on him, a bright blast erupts and he emerges from beneath the rubble. He comes out boasting about how powerful he is and how he was chosen by the gods, but just then, he begins to bleed from the head and eyes. Gara sees this and comments on how much damage he took after Arshas hit him with the lethal blow called Exodus. Regardless, Dark Schneider isn't one to back down from a fight, so he gets back up again to resume the intense showdown with Arshas. Still confident that he's the strongest, Dark Schneider taunts Arshas, telling her that she doesn't have what it takes to defeat him. This enrages her and she vows to kill him even though he was once like a father to her. Suddenly, Arshas summons the Thunder Spirits to attack Dark Schneider, and Gara, who's watching on the sidelines, comments on how difficult it is to summon even a single spirit and control it. At that point, Dark Schneider decides to summon his own spirits, the fire spirits called the Salamanders. As the battle rages on, Arshas remembers the times when she was a child. She was bullied and discriminated against for being a half-elf. Neither humans nor elves accepted her and she was abandoned at a young age during the war. Only one person took her in, and it was Dark Schneider. He tries to remind her of how they met and how he took her in when everyone else left her. He reminds her of the many years they spent together as a family and how they were lovers. Dark Schneider finally manages to calm her down, and just when he's about to end the fight with a kiss, something unexpected happens. Arshas suddenly starts to scream in pain as he holds her in his arms. She then blasts him away and her finger suddenly starts to mutate. It turns out that she's been cursed by Abigail, who was watching the entire battle through his crystal ball. He reveals that he knew she was still in love with Dark Schneider and tells Kalsu that she would keep getting strangled by the accuse spell implanted in her finger the more she opens her heart to Dark Schneider. Eventually, the color of her fingernail would turn crimson, and at that point, she would transform into a toad unless she's able to kill Dark Schneider by ripping out his heart from his chest. As Abigail continues to manipulate Arshas, Dark Schneider tries to check on her, but she blasts him away again. She finally turns against him and vows to kill him again. Because of their lack of focus and the severe damage he suffered, Dark Schneider begins to lose control of the fire spirits he summoned. Arshas continues to land deadly hits on him, but he keeps getting up and she wishes he would just die so the fight would end. She begins to cry because she doesn't want to kill him. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a choice because if she doesn't, she'll be consumed by the accuse spell. Yoko notices that Arshas' aura has changed and sees that she's in tears, but then suddenly, she and Princess Sheila are attacked by one of the Thunder Spirits. Luckily, they survive the blast, but Dark Schneider's rage increases when he realizes that Arshas tried to kill Yoko. With very little power left in him, he decides to summon his most powerful and dangerous spell to defeat Arshas, and she does the same, knowing that he's already very weak. The two blast each other with all their might, and while Dark Schneider is fighting to save Yoko, Arshas is trying to kill him so she doesn't get consumed by the accused spell. Just then, Obaba and Gio arrive to see if the vision they had seen was being manifested. Back on the battlefield, Gara comments on how dangerous it would be to interfere with the two sorcerers while performing the ultimate spell of destruction and states that there's nothing they can do to stop him. Arshas is slowly pushed back by Dark Schneider's blast, and just when she's about to be killed by his spell, she tells him to hold her in his arms one last time before she dies. Suddenly, the apparition of Lucian Renlin appears to Dark Schneider and reveals that Arshas doesn't want to kill him because she loves him. However, she doesn't have a choice because if she doesn't, she'll be destroyed by the accuse spell that Abigail cast on her. When Dark Schneider realizes this, he becomes even more enraged and vows to kill Abigail for what he had done to his daughter. As a result, he ceases his attacks and walks over to a defeated Arshas. She looks up at him in tears and asks her if her finger hurts. She responds by crying, and he promises to set her free from the curse. Suddenly, he punches a hole in his chest and rips out his heart, allowing the blood to drop on her finger, which neutralizes the spell and frees her from it. After taking out his heart to save Arshas, a malevolent spirit is ejected from her body and Dark Schneider collapses with a gaping hole in his chest. Arshas catches him as he's about to fall, while Gara and the others who are watching the battle also shed tears as they mourn the death of their dear friend. At the same time, Obaba looks down at Dark Schneider's lifeless body and confirms that her vision had finally come true. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Abigail gloats over Dark Schneider's demise because he tells that now that he's gone, there's no one left to stop him from completing his evil objectives. The story continues at the castle of the royal family of White Snake. The prince scolds his army general for not being able to defeat Kalsu. We find out that their kingdom is being ravaged by a snowstorm that had been conjured by Kalsu. The prince asks his commander what the plan is to defeat the powerful sorcerer, and he reveals that they haven't been able to neutralize his spell even with 100 of their best mages at work. This infuriates the prince even more as he feels more disappointed, knowing that Kalsu is just moments away from taking down their kingdom and getting their seal. Unfortunately, while he continues to berate his general, Kalsu unleashes another devastating attack on her kingdom. This time, it's a more powerful spell that freezes the entire kingdom, turning everyone inside into blocks of ice. Sure seems like a terrible way to die, but it's better than what Abigail is doing to the kingdom of Iron Maiden and the royal family. There, Abigail unleashes his army of decay, made up of corpses and skeleton soldiers that kill the people and transform them into undead soldiers as well. At this point, the two dark sorcerers, Abigail and Kalsu, now have 3 of 4 seals from the 4 kingdoms. They only need the seal from the kingdom of Metallicana now so that they can resurrect their demon god of destruction, Anthrasax. Once again, Abigail confidently declares their victory because, with Darkschneider finally dead, there's no one in Metallicana that's strong enough to stop them from completing their mission. Kalsu notices that the statue of Anthrasax keeps changing shape to become more terrifying, so he asks Abigail about it. He responds by stating that there's no reason to be concerned because even though the demon god is incredibly powerful and destructive, they would still be able to control it. It's been 3 days since Darkschneider died and Arshas had refused to leave his side. Eventually, she collapsed from exhaustion and was finally taken to her room. A while later, Yoko goes to see his body and is still devastated that he's no more. She jokes about how he still owed her some money that he couldn't pay, and as she says it, a tear drops from her eyes on his face. She then kisses him before leaving. Afterward, Lars goes to see the body, sad and disappointed that he didn't live long enough to become the Dragon Warrior. He's still talking when he notices something strange happen. Darkschneider's body suddenly begins to glow and appears to be transforming. Meanwhile, Princess Sheila goes to see her father, the king of Metallicana. The old man expresses his worry about the kingdom because he knows that it won't be long before Abigail and Kalsu storm the kingdom to take their seal so they can bring Anthrasax back to life. He decides that it's time he showed his daughter the secrets of the seal in the family. Elsewhere, Gara and one of his ninjas discuss their plans to defeat the army of decay headed their way. Meanwhile, Abigail and Kalsu begin to put the seals in place to begin the ritual of resurrection to awaken Anthrasax. Back in Metallicana, Arshas insists on fighting in the battle, ignoring Gura's protests till he allows her to join them. They all head outside to battle the army of decay marching toward them. Gara asks her to obliterate the undead soldiers with one of her spells, but she explains that she hasn't recovered enough to perform them. Suddenly, she notices a living human among the marching corpses. He's standing beside a huge knight that they identify as Lynch, the commander of the army of decay. Lynch is a powerful knight considered immortal and almost as strong as Diamond. Back in the castle, the king tells Sheila about how the seals of the 4 royal families aren't physical objects and how they're of different forms. He then reveals that the seal is hidden away in something close to her. Meanwhile, Abigail and Kalsu successfully initiate the resurrection ritual and Anthrasax begins to awaken as they open the seals. Inside the tomb, Lars realizes that Lucian's dead body is gradually transforming into Darkschneider again. On the battlefield, Gura and Arshas take on the powerful knight, Lynch, but he's too strong for them because his dark magic has been amplified by the reawakening of the demon god, Anthrasax. Lynch attacks them with his raging destruction strike, but Gara takes the hit to protect Arshas. She holds him in her arms, baffled by how powerful Lynch has become, so he reveals that Anthrasax's resurrection has made everyone with dark magic much stronger. Hearing this, her mind flashes to Darkschneider, knowing that he possesses dark magic. Turns out she wasn't too far off because others had seen the bright light coming from Lucian's tomb and gone there, only to find his heart regenerating and his body transforming back into Darkschneider's. His heart finally regenerates completely, but it doesn't start beating, and a High Priestess Obaro warns them not to go near him because the aura is extremely powerful and deadly. However, Yoko quickly rushes to his body and begins slapping him on the face to wake him up. Thankfully, after several hard slaps, he suddenly wakes with a large explosion. When the dust clears, Darkschneider is standing naked with all of his glory on display. He sweeps Yoko off her feet and carries her, apologizing for not coming back earlier, and the love-struck girl just stares at him in amazement. As Yoko looks upon Darkschneider in awe, he tries to be modest by stating that he's just a handsome hero. He then makes a dirty joke about sleeping with her later because he doesn't want to transform back to Lucian yet. This joke earns him a smack on the head, leaving the most powerful sorcerer wincing like a child. We catch up with Gara and Arshas on the battlefield with Lynch. Tashi, the human standing among the undead army, starts to get worried that Dark Schneider might be alive, till he urges Lynch to hurry up and kill them. It turns out that Tashi, who keeps referring to himself as a world-famous necromancer, created Lynch using the best parts of all the undead knights and soldiers, making him the ultimate knight in his army. He boasts about how invincible Lynch now is, thanks to the armor Abigail gave him and also because of Anthrac's resurrection, stating that they don't stand a chance against him. As you'd expect, Gura and Arshas don't back down from the fight. Gura then mocks Tashi for being short, which enrages him. Gura and Arshas then unleash their most powerful attacks on the giant knight, which are supposed to destroy him. Unfortunately, they're not enough and Lynch emerges from the dust without any scratches. Seeing this, Tashi becomes more confident and commanded him to destroy them once and for all. Just when he's about to kill them, the handsome hero arrives to save them. He reveals that Lynch isn't the only one who benefited from Anthrac's resurrection and goes on to obliterate the giant knight effortlessly by consuming him with fire. After he defeats Lynch, Arshas rushes to embrace him, relieved that he came back to life. At that point, Gura scolds him for toying with their emotions by pulling that sort of stunt when he wasn't sure he would survive. However, Dark Schneider points out that he's a hero blessed by the gods and that they shouldn't be afraid because he'd always come back to life. Despite being annoyed at the reckless and irresponsible hero, Gura admits that he's glad to have him back. Afterward, Dark Schneider suggests that they celebrate their victory with a triumphant return to the kingdom. When they return, Dark Schneider basks in the praise of the people in the kingdom. When Arshas sees Yoko and Sheila, she gets clingy and embraces Dark Schneider, probably to make them feel jealous. What a way to mark her territory. Meanwhile, the other soldiers and the people gather around Dark Schneider asking how he came back to life. While that's happening, Lars flies over them, thinking about what he saw in the tomb. He and Geo seem to be the only ones who know that Dark Schneider didn't come back to life by himself. Lars knows that it was the dark energy from Anthrac's reawakening that brought Dark Schneider back, but that's not even the thing bothering him the most because, during a transformation, he caught a glimpse of Lucian Renlin's body, making him wonder if Lucian is actually Dark Schneider. Later that night, the king of Metallicana throws a feast to celebrate the victory in honor of Dark Schneider, but the honored guest isn't even around. Instead, he's in his room with Arshas. She keeps crying and feeling like she betrayed him because she tried to K him. What makes it even worse is that, despite all she did, he still sacrificed himself to save her. She keeps crying, but Dark Schneider comforts her, assuring her that he would give his life up to save her again if he had to. He then helps her get undressed, reminding her that he would always love her. Sure, the relationship is a bit weird since he keeps telling her that he sees her as his daughter, but Arshas doesn't mind what she is to him as long as he loves her. Elsewhere, Yoko lies in her bed thinking about Lucian and Dark Schneider. She ponders on how different he is when he's a handsome hero and how he doesn't care about the emotions of women around him. She misses the normal Lucian who doesn't have powers because of how sweet he is. Later that night, someone disguised as Santa Claus sneaks into Yoko's room while she's asleep. He tries to put something in her sock, but she wakes up and catches him. It doesn't take her more than a moment to know that it's Dark Schneider, so she asks him what he's doing. He realizes that the jade is up, so he admits that it's him, ripping off the beard. He reveals that he wanted to pay back the money he owed her by leaving the coin in her sock, but she reminds him that he's supposed to pay back with interest. That's when he comes up with the crazy idea to pay with his body, but this gesture gets him another hard smack in the face. Elsewhere, Abigail is frustrated that Dark Schneider came back to life and presumes that it could have been connected to the demon god's resurrection. Abigail finds out that Dark Schneider defeated the powerful undead knights with a dropkick before engulfing him, so he becomes even more worried because it means that he's more powerful than they thought. Lynch was wearing a rare armor called the Demon Mail, said to be stronger than any sword and repel all magic, so if Dark Schneider was able to defeat him, there's no telling what he's capable of. Just outside the kingdom, a giant Cyclops breaks in and begins ravaging the whole place. Meanwhile, inside, Geo and Gura talk about other rare weapons that are like Lynch's armor. Geo tells him about one called the legendary Devil Mace that's as powerful as the Thunder Sword, but Gura believes that his sword would allow him to defeat anyone wielding the mace. Just then, they're informed of the giant Cyclops going on a rampage inside the kingdom. They're also informed that the Cyclops is wielding a giant mace, so I guess we all know what that means. It's probably time for Gura to put his money where his mouth is. Meanwhile, inside his room, Dark Schneider notices the fires that started in other parts of the kingdom and suggests that something broke in. He tries to get a better look, but the clingy Arshas grabs hold of him, asking him to get back in bed with her. Out on the streets, the Cyclops continues to destroy everything in sight, and Tashi once again brags about how he created him using transplanted tissues from anthrax. The Cyclops uses the mace to create earthquakes, which shake the entire town, and Tashi chases a young girl so he can take her eyes and use them to create his next undead soldier. Thankfully, Dark Schneider arrives just in time to save her and beats the annoying dwarf to a pulp before ripping out one of his eyeballs. Despite all of this, Tashi refuses to give up and instead commands the Cyclops to kill Dark Schneider. That doesn't work out so well as he blasts a hole in the creature's chest, but suddenly it begins to regenerate and mutate into something much more dangerous. However, the handsome hero remains unfazed. The Cyclops changes shape, and once again Tashi brags about how he ingeniously infused tissues from the god of destruction in the Cyclops to make it somewhat immortal. Gara tells Dark Schneider that he needs to come up with a plan, but the arrogant and reckless hero insists that they just stand back and watch him defeat the threat. Tashi then commands the Cyclops to display the power of the Devil Mace, so it uses it to create a powerful earthquake. Dark Schneider responds by blasting out magma from beneath the ground, but the creature regenerates again. The Cyclops then initiates another attack with the mace, and this time it begins to glow with a bright light. Gara takes Arshas to safety while Dark Schneider gets fed up with Tashi's antics. He grabs the small man and blinds his second eye. While he's doing that, the Cyclops begins to reject the transplanted tissues from anthrax, making it vulnerable to more attacks. With Gara and Arshas by his side, Dark Schneider casts a devastatingly powerful spell to destroy the Cyclops before teleporting them to another dimension with a large fiery vortex. Afterward, he gloats about his victory like the cocky hero he is, but quickly gets scolded by Yoko for destroying half of the kingdom with his spell. Later, the king's advisor suggests that he remove Dark Schneider from their army because of how reckless and destructive he is, but he explains that the creatures they're facing can't be defeated by ordinary human soldiers. Sheila suggests destroying or hiding the last seal, but he points out that neither of those plans would work either and states that the battle is inevitable. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Abigail sees just how powerful Dark Schneider is, so he decides that he has no choice but to summon the king of the undead to defeat him. Back in the kingdom, the people suddenly see a black cloud moving toward them. They then watch in horror as the king of the undead appears within the clouds and transforms those who look him in the eyes into zombies. Gara sees the cloud and informs Dark Schneider, who is with Yoko, and while they wonder what it could be, the king of the undead turns more and more soldiers into his army of decay. The king of the undead continues to turn everything and everyone he touches into decaying matter, while Dark Schneider and the others are still inside trying to figure out how to stop him. To stop the dark cloud from getting any closer, Dark Schneider places a wall of fire as a barrier to stop the king of the undead and his army from getting in. Dark Schneider remains confident that he can easily defeat the new undead soldier Abigail summoned, but Arshas reminds him of what Tashi said before he got sucked into the vortex. He had told Dark Schneider that he wouldn't be able to defeat the next undead monster. However, the arrogant hero insists that he can't be beaten, and Arshas fears that the love of her life might be killed one day for his arrogance. Soon, the king of the undead breaks through the flaming barrier, so Dark Schneider goes with Gara and Arshas to confront him. A battle ensues, and the king of the undead uses the Satan ring to create a black hole which sucks Dark Schneider in, so Arshas jumps in as well because she doesn't want to lose him again. Meanwhile, the Devil Mace seems to be absorbing all the magical power in the kingdom and giving the energy to the undead king. After Dark Schneider and Arshas get sucked into the black hole, Gara is the only one left to fight the undead king, so he braces himself for the battle so he can use the Satan ring to save his friends before they're lost in between dimensions. Inside the storage room of the castle, Yoko goes to investigate which of the demonic weapons could be sucking the magic and life force out of everyone around, and she finds out that it's the Devil Mace. There, she also encounters Abigail, who's come looking for the seal. He boasts to her, telling her that Dark Schneider can't come back to life this time, but she confidently tells him that he's wrong. She truly believes that Dark Schneider can't be killed because he's the hero, and this makes Abigail a bit worried. Back on the battlefield, the undead king has gotten fed up with Gara, so he attacks him with a devastating spell. Gara survives thanks to his armor, but he knows that he can't take another hit that powerful. Desperate to win, he sacrifices himself by using his cursed sword Morisami to strike the undead king. Unfortunately, his sacrifice goes in vain as the enemy survives because the mace had sucked out half the power from the sword. However, Gara somehow manages to get back up with blood dripping out of his armor. He reveals that he still has one more trick and then unleashes a barrage of attacks on the undead king. This time, he manages to burn away his skin, leaving only bones, but still, the villain refuses to die. Unfortunately, Gura is completely drained of energy, so the Undead King prepares to unleash the finishing blow. Just then, Dark Schneider and Arshas emerge from the black hole with the Thunder and Fire beasts. They restrain the Undead King, and Dark Schneider finally obliterates him with the Fire Sword. As the Undead gets burned away, he rants about how he almost unlocked a power greater than that of the God of Destruction, but Dark Schneider is fed up with him, so he destroys him for good. The black clouds clear, and they realize that Gura isn't moving, and Dark Schneider gives a premature funeral speech because Gura eventually wakes up. As the two guys bicker with each other, Arshas reflects on what the Undead King said and wonders what he meant when he talked about using the Satan Ring to unlock a power greater than that of Anthrax's. That's all for today's recap. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see the next part. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.